It's in the back of your mind every time you sign up. Maybe every session you go out. You hope it never happens, but if you do this hobby long enough, statistics are not your friend. You are probably going to crash. Yes, people crash at track days. Even though it's not a competition, we're still pushing our cars to their absolute limits and often beyond. Hardly an event goes by where I don't see someone do some serious damage to their beloved machine. And this weekend was my turn. In this video, I'll spill over all the video, all the collected data, and my own memories to try to sort out just what went wrong. We'll start with my car. It's a 2004 Mazda RX-8. It's a street car on street tires. I've got some basic upgrades: coilovers, bracing, upgraded pads and fluids, and wider wheels and tires. But it still has a full interior with factory safety equipment, minus the front airbags. Those were recalled Takata units that I opted to just remove. Really glad I did. This car has ABS, and I'm driving with the stability and traction control completely turned off. I bought this car in 2015 and started doing track days in it a year later, so I've got plenty of experience in it. To dump more salt in the wound, I just had the car fully repainted 2 months before this crash. This was my second event at Mid-Ohio and the first one in the RX-8. The weather was iffy all weekend thanks to the remnants of Hurricane Helene. The crash happened on the second day of the event when the track was fully saturated. It was the fourth session of the day, so everything was good and warmed up: driver, tires, brakes. Temps were near 70 degrees, so the track wasn't cold either. But it was definitely slick. A lot of us were sliding around, and I did see a couple cars go off track. I was being cautious, running at a pace at least 20 seconds slower than the previous day. Here's my fastest lap from Saturday, a 1:52 with traffic and drizzle. In what would become my last session on Sunday, I was running consistently around 2:15. This is the lap where it all went wrong. I'm headed down the long straight at triple digits. I'm braking early right here at these cones, and then, yeah. I'm not hurt at all, so I throw my thumb up to let the corner workers know. Black flags come out, and I wait for the safety crews to arrive. I had no idea why the car had spun. I mean, yeah, I was doing a $115 in the rain and threshold braking down a hill. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes, I know. But usually when you screw up on track, you know it instantly. You blew the apex, turned in too early, or started thinking about work instead of that next turn. But in my mind, I had entered that braking zone the same way I had the last 5 laps. I'm doing the same thing, shouldn't I get the same result? Let's break it down. All this data is collected by my AIM Solo from its onboard sensors and GPS, along with the OBD connection to the car. The RX-8 is 20 years old, so it doesn't have all the fine data points you get from modern cars, but it still has a few things. I can see each individual wheel's speed, my steering angle, and if I'm hitting the brakes. I don't know the brake pressure, and that steering angle value is funky. I'm doing my best to translate it to a degree value, but it's not exact. My GoPro is rolling at 60 frames per second, so let's slow it down to half speed. Oof. Now I'll talk through it step by step. Here I'm lifting, then on the brakes. This is way early for this turn, so I'm not in any hurry to stomp the pedal. You can see the G-meter pull forward nice and straight. All 4 tires begin decelerating smoothly. But here I see something odd. The GoPro has stabilization that crops the video based on its motion sensors. You can see it start to pan right here, which means its yaw sensor is telling it that it's being tugged to the left. The AIM Solo agrees. There's a slight G-load to the right, indicating the car is being pulled left. Then right here, something happens. You see the left front of the car dive, and it begins to rotate. The G-meter ball rolls left as the car is suddenly jerked to the right. You can see me countersteering a little bit, but the rear continues to come around. I lift off the brakes, as indicated by the reduced G-load on the front. This is an attempt to shift weight back to the rear wheels so they regain traction. But the car continues to rotate. Then I do something that doesn't make sense. I've steered slightly back to the right into the spin. I think at this point, I knew I was in trouble. I could see that close outside wall in my peripheral vision to the left, and a wide strip of grass to my right, so maybe my reaction was to keep the car to the right. Best case scenario at this point is to spin the car and go straight off the track into the sand trap over the crest of the hill. Avoid the walls, they are not your friend. As I start to leave the track, you see the G-forces pull forward again as I jam back on the brakes. The engine revs start to drop. This is the both feet in reaction that I've been taught since my days in autocross. You know the car is going to spin, so you mash the clutch and brake and let physics take over. Unfortunately for me, I had too much lateral speed already, and I double tap the wall as I come around. There goes my aim solo. It actually put a small hole in the dash. It lost its data connection with the car before I even hit, but was still recording with its internal sensors. What sucks is that if I had hit the brakes a second later, I would have been far enough down the track to completely miss that wall. Oh well. To narrow down what caused this, let's go over some common factors that cause crashes. You can divide them up into 3 categories: unavoidable conditions, mechanical malfunction, driver error. I say unavoidable because general conditions like rain or cold tires don't cause crashes. It's still the driver's job to adapt to those conditions. Unavoidable would be like, a car in front of you dropped a rod and a few quarts of oil on the track. I've seen that a few times, and it's a wild ride you don't want to be on. There was nothing to suggest dramatically changing conditions here, so I think we can rule that whole category out. I took much of the RX-8 apart after the crash, and I didn't find any smoking guns. Although if something had failed on the left side of the car, that wall certainly erased the evidence. I will say that the car was performing well at the time of the crash. The brakes felt normal, the fluid was fresh, pads were thick, and I didn't experience any fade all weekend. The tires were fairly new Falcon Street tires, and I had checked the pressure before the session. This was my 4th session of the day, so I had them dialed in to around 40 psi. I will say, they weren't that great in the rain, as the difference in lap times will show, but by this late in the weekend, I had adjusted to that and was being very conservative. So while I can't definitively rule out any malfunction, I haven't seen any evidence. That leaves us with driver error, the cause of most crashes both on and off the track. There are a lot of common ones associated with this type of crash. Braking too late, blowing the apex. Definitely not. Trail braking beyond the limit. I was braking in a straight line when I spun, so nope. Dropping a wheel off. This would be when one or more wheels are on paint or a rumble strip or grass. That will definitely cause a spin, but no, all 4 wheels were in the right place. Overcompensation. No, I'm not talking about driving a big diesel truck to the mall. I mean overreaction, countersteering too much, or lifting off the brakes too fast. These things can make the situation way worse by snapping the car back in the opposite direction. If anything, I think I countersteered too little and didn't let off the brakes enough, so count this one out. Floppy downshift. My downshift zone was way down closer to the apex of this turn, so I spun long before that. Overbraking. This one is harder to nail down. Observe with this super sophisticated computer simulation. There are 2 basic situations that unfold. Scenario 1, understeer. The front wheels lose traction first. ABS kicks in, or without ABS the wheels lock. The rear is still decelerating, but the front is not, so the car continues in the direction it is moving. I wasn't braking hard enough to trigger ABS in that session. You can see from my wheel speed data that no wheels locked up or slowed to an unreasonable speed. Let's see what I did there. The other outcome of overbraking is oversteer. The rear wheels lose traction first. The front wheels are still slowing, but the rear wheels are not. Physics takes over and the rear wheels end up out front. That's essentially what a spin is. The rear of your car is moving faster than the front. I assumed early on that this was my case, but the data seems to refute this. The rear wheels are slowing slightly ahead of the fronts, which indicates that they still have traction. And if you compare the G-load to previous laps, I'm not braking any harder than I was before. As much as I hate it, I simply don't have an explanation for this crash. I was in a good state of mind, performing consistently with no mechanical faults or outside conditions, and what data I have looks nominal. I have to assume that there must be driver error in there somewhere. Could I have reacted better? Sure. In retrospect, a little more countersteer or lifting completely off the brakes may have saved me from the wall, or put me in the other wall. But I don't fully understand what sent the car into the spin in the first place. I'm not going to pretend that it doesn't drive me crazy, because I'd really like to avoid this in the future. Without avoiding the whole hobby, of course. I took my other car to VIR a few weeks later and set a personal best. Get back on the horse, as they say. So, Gaming chair physicists and crash investigators, what do you think? Am I missing something? Drop me a comment. I'd love to hear your theories. Now, I'm sure you all want to know how much damage this little spin double tap caused. So here it is. The front took most of the structural damage. Fender, hood, front bumper, all that had to be replaced. Strut towers held up, so only superficial parts of the frame had to be cut and replaced. Suspension damage was light, with only a bent tie rod, and both wheels are toast. The impact did break a motor mount, but I think the engine is okay. Only the coolant overflow bottle broke, which is why you see steam in the video. The rear doesn't look as bad, but actually took quite a hit. The entire suspension on this side was destroyed along with the axle. The impact even cracked the brake rotor and broke off a lug. That's not a good sign. Luckily, the body was able to be pulled straight. Yeah, this is a 5-figure repair on a 4-figure car, no doubt. But I've had this one a long time and already dumped a ton of money into rebuilding the motor, so it is getting fixed. I'll post up a video when it's all back together and driving again. Subscribe and click the bell if you want to be notified when that happens. This has been Unreasonable Speed. Thanks for watching and keep it shiny side up.